Are you making fun of me? Isn't it customary to bring high-end desserts? My business partner scoffed at me for bringing my wife's homemade pudding as a gift. There's no way we can serve this shabby-looking pudding to the president, he said, then he snatched the bag of pudding from my hand and threw it into the trash can. A sad sound echoed in the room. I was left speechless at this sudden incident. Overwhelmed by anger and frustration at not being able to do anything, I returned home. "That man's getting fired," said my wife with a mischievous grin. I was surprised by her smile, which was different from usual. The next day, I was invited to the president's office and was shocked by the unexpected turn of events. My name is Danny Klein, and this is my 10th year working as an office worker. I'm about to take a gift to a business partner, but I'm quite nervous. The reason being that the person I'm about to see is known to be difficult to work with. A man named Walter Morris. If you don't bring a gift he likes, he won't even have a proper conversation with you. At worst, he would say, "Something urgent has come up," and he'd send you back right away. Still, he's an important business partner, so I had to put up with him. One day, my manager came to my desk and said, "That company's patented technology is indeed excellent. You know that it has significantly grown our company." "Yes, but I also do notice that they've turned arrogant because of it." "Indeed, we used to work hand in hand to create better products." My manager's eyes narrowed as if remembering something, then he turned a sympathetic gaze on me. I let out a bitter laugh and ran my hand through my hair at the back of my head. "I've heard that the president and his wife are kind people, despite the current partner, the person in charge, being a difficult man. I hope for things to get better soon." "Indeed, it should improve in a while. It's tough, but that's part of the job." "Thank you, I'll do my best. But picking a gift each time is a headache. He accuses me of slacking off if I bring the same ones." "The gift? Oh, by the way, I remember that the president's wife is quite fond of pudding. If you have a chance to meet them again, how about buying a pudding?" Upon hearing my manager's words, I thought of a pudding from a particular store. Its texture was as smooth as cream and it melted in your mouth. It was a pudding that perfectly balanced richness and sweetness. The pudding made by my wife, Lily. Lily runs a small pastry shop that she has created by renovating a part of our house. Of course, the taste is guaranteed. It's a popular product that's loved by everyone in the neighborhood, from kids to seniors, often selling out by mid-afternoon. I wrapped up a conversation with my boss and decided to rush home after work. At home, Lily, who had finished her work, had started preparing dinner in the kitchen. As I approached Lily, I could smell a faint sweetness. Humming a tune and greeting me with, "Welcome home," I immediately told Lily about the conversation I had earlier. "The boss's wife seems to be a big fan of pudding. I'd like to take some as a gift. Could you make some?" "Do you think my pudding would be good enough?" Lily said this, but I could see she was smiling with delight, which relieved me. Even though Lily is great at making puddings, preparing it as a gift for the wife of my business partner is probably nerve-wracking. But Lily willingly said okay. As soon as she finished making dinner, she started prepping for the pudding without having her dinner, saying she needed to prepare for tomorrow. "Thank you, Lily. I'm sorry." "No problem. I want many people to taste my pudding." Saying so, Lily busily started the prep, moving back and forth between the kitchen and the shop. Seeing her like this, I couldn't just stand there doing nothing. I decided to help Lily with the prep by following her instructions. That day, we ended up going to bed later than usual. Looking forward to seeing the boss and his wife's reaction tomorrow, I immediately fell asleep. The next morning when I woke up, Lily was already awake and popped her head out from the shop wearing a white apron. "It's ready!" On the tray in Lily's hand were several puddings cutely wrapped. "Thank you, Lily." I didn't know what time she woke up to do all this, but I could feel the effort Lily put into it, and I thanked her multiple times. Lily, seeming a bit shy, laughed and said, "It didn't take that long because you helped me." As I recalled the morning's events, a smile spread across my face. I carefully placed the puddings, wrapped in white paper bags with blue ribbons, on the passenger seat and let out a sigh. With renewed determination, I started up the company car. There shouldn't be any problem if it's Lily's pudding. It will definitely go well. That's what I believed. Until I heard a voice trampling on my feelings. What is this? As always, I mentioned Walter's name to the smiling receptionist at the client's entrance and was told to wait a bit. I gently sat on the chair in the entrance, checking to make sure the pudding in the bag wasn't overturned. While waiting, I saw Walter, who had just a hint of a smile, coming from the elevator right next to the entrance. And when he peered at what was in my hands, the first thing he said was, "What is this?" in a dubious tone. I involuntarily flinched. Nonetheless, I replied, trying to appear unfazed. "It's just a little something. It's pudding. My wife, who runs a pastry shop, made it." However, my words were cut off by Walter's scoff. "Pudding? Are you making fun of me? Isn't it customary to bring high-end desserts?" His words were dripping with scorn. His eyes were narrowed and the corner of his mouth was slightly raised as if to mock. At first, I didn't understand what he was saying, but as I slowly realized, I noticed that my fists were trembling in rage. My partner was a client with whom we'd been working amicably so far. I couldn't afford to ruin that relationship here, so I swallowed my feelings and started to speak. "Although not high-end, my wife has been making puddings that are pretty popular." "No way! I can't possibly eat a pudding made by an amateur." Walter roughly snatched the bag of pudding from my hand. "What are you doing?" I was so surprised that I snapped at him. My anxious voice and Walter's dry laugh echoed throughout the entrance. The receptionist who had attended to me earlier and some employees who just happened to pass by were looking at us suspiciously. "I'm bothered by being presented with such trashy stuff." Walter lifted the bag to his face and narrowed his eyes as if examining it. While I felt my blood rising to my head, I struggled to maintain my composure. "But I heard it's the CEO's wife's favorite." "Even so, would you bring something made by an amateur?" "My wife is certainly not an amateur." "Even so, you must understand that I can't serve such an unsightly pudding to the president." With that, Walter let go of the bag he was holding over the trash can placed next to the chair. It all happened in an instant. My body couldn't react in time, and I could only stand there in silence. The bag with the pudding inside fell into the trash can, making a sorrowful sound. A small scream came from the receptionist's direction. "I'll dispose it for you today. Just be careful next time," he said, his voice laced with what sounded like utter annoyance. All I could do was stare at the discarded pudding and utter an almost inaudible, I'm sorry." Walter nodded silently, whether satisfied by my reaction, I wasn't sure. "I had some urgent matters come up. I hate to ask, but can you leave?" Without waiting for my reply, he turned on his heel and walked towards the elevator. Throughout all this, I remained frozen, unable to take my eyes off the discarded pudding. I don't know how much time passed, but before I knew it, I was back in my car that my company had provided. Remembering how hard Lily had worked to make the pudding made my heart ache, and an uncontrollable anger welled up within me. Above all, I was frustrated with myself for not being able to say or do anything because he was a business partner. I couldn't get any work done that day as I pondered what to tell Lily. "Did they enjoy the pudding?" Lily asked, smiling as I returned home. She was leisurely sipping tea on the couch. Caught off guard, I stopped untying my tie. "Did something happen?" Lily asked, leaning in with a worried look on her face. Unable to keep quiet, I finally confessed to Lily what had happened earlier in the day. "I'm sorry, the pudding you made with so much effort. He threw it away right in front of me." Lily looked surprised at my confession, but she immediately squeezed my hand gently. "It's not your fault. Maybe there was something wrong with the pudding." But I knew that wasn't the case. After all, Walter had thrown it into the trash without even looking inside the bag. Even if it hadn't been pudding, if it wasn't what Walter called a fine pastry, it probably would have ended up in the trash. And besides, Lily stops me as I attempt to apologize once again. Then she seems to ponder a bit, and with a cheeky grin she says, "That man's getting fired." "Fired?" I'm just kidding. Though it might not have been perfect, it's a shame to hear that the pudding I put so much effort into making was thrown away. Lily chuckles softly. Her reaction's fair, having her pudding thrown away like that after she put so much work in. Of course she would want to make remarks about my rude client, even though it's unlike her. But it could very well happen, you know. Her enigmatic words added at the end left me somewhat baffled. But that was the end of the conversation. Lily urged me to wash up early that night, so I bathed in confusion and went to bed earlier than usual. The next day, with yesterday's incident still weighing on me, I left for work with a heavy heart. Upon returning to the office the day before, my boss had instructed, "I know it's not ideal, but tomorrow you need to buy a cake from the high-end Western confectionery store in front of the station." I recalled his words before leaving home and brought a cake from the pastry shop in front of the station on my way to work. I placed the box from the high-end Western pastry shop on the passenger seat and let out a sigh deeper than yesterday's. Yesterday evening, I had informed Walter that I will visit again tomorrow with a token of apology. Perhaps due to the incident, Walter responded in an overly arrogant tone. "All right, I'm counting on you this time," and hung up the call. I should get going now. In the driver's seat of my company's car, I somehow motivated myself and headed towards the client's office. As I walked through the automatic doors of the entrance, a receptionist who recognized me hurried over. "You're Mr. Klein from Company XX, correct?" "Yes, that's right, but—" "Please come this way." I followed the receptionist's lead and stepped into the elevator. Before I knew what was going on, the elevator had reached its destination floor. The room I was led to was the president's office. The receptionist knocked on the door a few times and, opening the large door, simply said, "Please come in." I entered the room without understanding the situation. Inside the president's office were the president of the client company, his wife, and Walter looking pale. I had thought that he would act haughty again today due to yesterday's incident, but I was mistaken. "Nice to meet you. I'm Danny Klein from Company XX. Thank you for having me here today." With a question mark hovering over my head, I greeted the president of the company we were dealing with, Mr. Peterson. "You must be Danny. Nice to meet you. I'm Mr. Peterson. This is my wife, Anne." "Nice to meet you." Cutting the greeting short, Mr. Peterson and his wife exchanged glances, called out my name Danny, and bowed deeply. "We are truly sorry for what happened. We apologize." "I beg your pardon?" I asked, surprised by the sudden change in the president's tone. Next to the president, his wife was also bowing with a speechless expression. I hurriedly told them to please lift your heads, but they wouldn't. Next thing I know, Walter, standing diagonally behind them, was also bowing. "We are terribly sorry." The usual arrogant Walter was nowhere to be found. Instead, I saw him apologizing with careful words for the first time. Caught off guard, I was at a loss for words. "Actually, yesterday, my wife noticed something in the lobby trash can while cleaning," he continued. His wife nodded in agreement. I thought I saw a hint of anger in her eyes. "When she asked around, she was told that the pudding you brought earlier in the day had been rudely thrown away by him. We hurriedly called him to confirm, and at first he denied it, but later grudgingly admitted it." A cold glance from Mr. Peterson was directed at Walter. Upon noticing the gaze, Walter bit his lip and turned away. "I did not know that Mrs. Peterson liked pudding. I assumed it was a lie from Danny, and I threw it away without thinking twice. I am sorry." His voice was quieter than I had ever heard before. As I was stunned by the un-Walter-like attitude, Mrs. Peterson shook her head with a stern face. "That's not why I'm angry." Mrs. Peterson, who had been silent until now, muttered in an anger-laced voice as if to correct him. "Danny, I have also known about the pudding from Lily's store for a while. I also knew it was so popular that it always sold out. Despite being so busy, you had prepared the pudding for me." Unable to endure Mrs. Peterson's gaze, Walter whimpered. "My wife can't forgive you for trampling on the goodwill of the makers, you, Danny, and Lily. I can't believe an employee of a manufacturing company doesn't understand the value of the thoughts poured into a product." I was shocked. Not just because Mrs. Peterson knew about Lily's store, but because she understood the feelings of a craftsman in the manufacturing process. Walter, who had turned from pale to white, began to say, "I'm sorry. But Mr. Peterson immediately pointed out, "Face the person you're apologizing to," and made him lift his pale face. "I sincerely apologize for carelessly discarding the handmade gift from your wife yesterday without thinking twice." Walter, who berated and threw away my wife's pudding yesterday, was now apologizing to me, facing me straight and repeatedly bowing his head. In that moment, I felt something clearing up within me. After coming home, I saw Lily drinking tea on the sofa, just like yesterday. Without even greeting her, "I'm back," I began to talk about today's events. Lily, without interrupting me, listened till the end, then smiled and said, "That's what I thought." "That's what I thought? You knew this would happen?" Her attitude since yesterday suggested she had expected all of this. Lily stood up and brought a cup of tea for me from the kitchen. As she handed it to me, she began to speak. "Actually, yesterday evening, a pale-looking man in a suit came to buy our pudding, but it was already sold out. But he told me that the wife of his company's CEO is a big fan of our pudding, so—" "Could it be?" The president's wife that he was referring to must be Ann Peterson. Lily nodded affirmatively, her face beaming with joy. "It feels so good to know there are people who understand and appreciate the thoughts of us producers. It makes me want to make even better things for such people." Lily, still smiling, took a sip of her tea. Seeing her genuinely happy, I felt like I truly understood the words of Mr. and Mrs. Peterson. At the same time, I felt remorse. Did I truly understand and value the thoughts of the producers like Lily does while I did my job? I was angry at Walter's arrogance, but was it not because I felt like we were doing him a favor by selling our products? Maybe I was also the one getting carried away. Like Lily, shouldn't I perform work that will deliver the thoughts of creators to consumers? I can't really call out Walter for his arrogance anymore. While I was contemplating all this, Lily noticed something and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "From now on, perhaps you'll consider both the creators and the users' perspectives." At Lily's words, I felt a bit embarrassed, but more than that, I felt ready to face my job with a renewed perspective. After this chain of events, Walter's attitude changed dramatically. He was no longer cocky and didn't demand gifts anymore. We now share our opinions openly in a good way, improving our relationship. Just like Lily, I also want to continue delivering the creator's thoughts to users through my work.